Welcome to the Sentai Podcast with your hosts Sam and Jay. We're here to discuss our favorite anime, interview industry figures, and a whole lot more. Visit sentai.com/podcast to see what we're all about. Today we're talking to Shannon Emerick, who voices Young Thorfinn in Vinland Saga.
Shannon Emerick has acted in many roles in well-known anime, including Vampire Hunter D, No Game, No Life, Clannad, and so many more. Now she voices Young Thorfinn in the new English dub of Vinland Saga, and we are so excited to sit down with her today for an interview about her experience.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you so much.
You were also Jenna in Review Starlight, who's my favorite character in that show. So
Outstanding.
Yes. Anyone with the bow and the glasses, that's
there you go.
Exactly.
There you go.
My favorite type of character right there. So why don't you start off? Tell us a little bit about yourself outside of work. What do you get up to? What do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, first and foremost, I am a proud mother of a teenage son, so that is a big part of my life, but I'm also very privileged. I have worked at a professional theater in Houston called Main Street Theater for 18 years, working both as an actor and also in marketing and communications with them, trying to convince the rest of the world they should love theater and the arts as much as I do. So yeah, I'm a native Texan, born in Dallas, lived on and off in the Northeast, and then back in Houston since '03. So yeah.
Houston has such an underrated theater scene.
Oh, it's extraordinary. It's been amazing to watch it grow. And I was actually in Houston for the first time in the mid-'90s, and it was already very good. And then just to see how much it has grown since then, it is incredibly vibrant. So we're doing what we can to get the word out about Houston theater.
Well, that is a noble goal, and I support you so much in that. Theater is such a beautiful thing. We talked a little bit before. I'm a theater kid.
Yes.
I love your work. I'm so happy you are trying to spread the joy of theater.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
So is voice acting something you always wanted to do? How did your career start? Was it voice acting first and then stage theater later, vice versa?
No, I've known since I was 12 that I wanted to be an actor. For better or worse, I put my blinders on. I had incredibly supportive parents and never looked back. So I definitely started in stage. I've done some film and television over the years, and then by pure luck, I got told about the studio back in '03, and back in those days we called in and put our name on an audition list. It took close to a year to get in. Things were really hopping. And then was lucky once I did my initial audition to start getting cast in some things, and then I just fell in love with it. I love voice acting in general. I think it's so, especially, stage is more forgiving than film and television, but voice acting is even more forgiving than that because, of course, you can be anybody and you can look like anything, but it's all about what you sound like. So I have absolutely I have done everything from Hello Kitty to Gantz to Little Busters to, and just playing all kinds of roles over the years. And it has been so much fun as an actor. It has helped me grow immensely as an actor, both in terms of stretching muscles I didn't have, and also in terms of cold readings. I won't get too into the weeds on that, but and then I would be very remiss if I didn't mention the humans involved behind the scenes. I've known the folks around here for many, many years, 18 years, 17 years. And it's just an extraordinary group of people, and it's always a joy to come and do the work. And so anytime I get a call, I'm like, sign me up.
Yeah. Well, I was looking over your credits from the past. We're just going to talk about theater for a little bit before we get to Vinland Saga. Apparently, we got to indulge in this.
Absolutely.
So you were in the first U.S. production of the Coast of Utopia?
Coast of Utopia, the Tom Stoppard trilogy.
That's 9 hours of Tom Stoppard.
That's right. Although we only did one marathon day.
Oh, okay.
But there have only been a handful of productions of the entire trilogy in the whole world over the years. Right. And outside of New York, outside of Lincoln Center, here at Main Street Theater in Houston, we were the first other U.S. production, and I'm actually not sure there's been another one, but I've been a Stoppard fan since college when I was introduced by my favorite professor. Right. You get it. I
had to do an Arcadia unit. Yeah.
Oh, we could do I've done 3 productions of Arcadia over the years. It is one of my absolute favorite plays ever of all time.
For good reason.
So it was Arcadia I mean, actually, probably it was Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, but
Of course.
where I first fell in love in
Right.
high school. But then in college, I dove deeper into Stoppard with Arcadia, and then that was it. So I've been very lucky to do 3 productions of Arcadia. I've done The Real Thing. I was in 2 of the 3 Stoppards in the Coast of Utopia, and I could just eat, breathe, and sleep Stoppard because I love that there may be 5 levels of intellect that go over your head that you aren't catching
Right.
all at once, but the characters are so incredibly human
Right.
and they are so passionate about whatever it is they're passionate about that you can't help but, I remember when I was living in New York, I lived in Manhattan for 6 years, and I got to see The Invention of Love, and I was up in the section where like the air is a different quality because you're so high, and it didn't matter. As soon as the lights went down, I was right there. I was in it, and I was completely transported. And so, yes, so Stoppard is one of my 2 favorite living playwrights. Is the way I say it.
And I guess circling back around to, nerd culture, maybe.
Hey.
You worked with Jim Parsons. You started opposite him. Yeah.
I did, and that was I'm so proud of him. Back in '98, back before most of you were born, I was living in New York at the time, but I had lived in Houston just before that, and the then artistic director at Stages Theater, his name was Rob Bundy. He was amazing, and he had been talking for a couple of years about, I've got this play I want to do, and I really want you to do it, which is always lovely to hear as an
Right,
actor, but you
right.
never know if it will happen. Sure enough, he called me in New York one day and said, I'm bringing you back to do this play, and that's actually how I got my equity card as well. And at the time, I was playing opposite Jim Parsons, whom I hadn't met before. We had an incredible time working together. He is just as marvelous as you'd think he would be. And then lo and behold, all these years later, he's just taken over the world. So it's fun to watch him. I remember when he booked his first 2 national commercials, and we were like, okay, something's going on here. And then, of course, Big Bang, and then the rest is history. So,
that's so
I
neat.
loved working with him. And that was a really weird, dark play, too. But we had a great time.
I was going to say, if it's a weird, dark play, I feel like he'd be a good person to have around. He's got such a great energy about him.
He does.
Yeah.
But he's also the king of capturing the offbeat.
Right.
So pair that with an incredibly nice human being, and he is, there's no stopping him.
Right. So we've talked about your past in the theater. Now we're moving forward. Vinland Saga, Young
Yes.
Thorfinn, Young
Yes.
Adventurer. How does he differ from some of your past roles? Does he present any unique challenges?
Absolutely. I loved getting to play Young Thorfinn. I had to go some places emotionally that with that role that I've gone on stage, and maybe once or twice over my career as a voiceover actor I've gone, but not very often, because it's a really heavy, heavy role, and for a child to be, without saying too much, to be traumatized in losing someone dear to them in the way that he has to face is really powerful. And as the mother of a son,
Right.
but also just as a human being, to watch this character go through some really, really hard circumstances. You have to go much deeper than some of the other. I actually love playing. My niche over the years has become playing, this sounds so funny, but playing the little boy or younger boy roles, because that's just where
Right.
my voice pitches.
Right.
And in the anime world. And then some adult females, too, which I've loved playing, too. But I got to go to, usually with the younger roles, they tend to be a bit lighter.
Yeah.
Not with Young Thorfinn. So it was incredibly intense and emotional, and it was very real. So it was a privilege to get to do that. And the story that they created is an exceptional story.
It is,
the
yeah.
storyline is really, I love that they went there. They trust the audience, and the fans enough to know they're going to want to come along with us on this journey, even though it's going to be a little harder than some of the others.
Right, you mentioned you were a mother at the beginning of this interview, and my next question was, what did you do to prepare for this role? And you kind of already touched on that, and when you said that, I kind of made a mental note. I have to ask about this. Did you think much about your family did that help inform your performance?
Well, you kind of can't, especially because of the relationship between young Thorfinn and his father, which
Right.
isn't giving anything away, but it is a child and a parent. And so, you know, I'm sort of instantly transported into the role. This time I'm on the other end because I'm playing the child. Right. Of course, I do have my own wonderful parents. But, yeah, you just kind of, one of the things I love about anime is we come in to the booth and you just jump right in. I mean, that's just the nature of the business. You have to jump right in. And so if what you're jumping into is something intensely emotional, that requires me as a human and as an actor to just immediately open myself to being vulnerable. And I love being asked to do that. It's because it won't work. You can't see what's on my face. You can't see my body language. So if I don't open myself enough, it will not come through in my voice. And so I think I knew going in that this was I think I'd been told this was a pretty intense role, but I didn't know too much else about it. And then so jump in, hear the storyline first, and then start doing the work really just allowed me to, it demanded that I just go all in. And there have been several times over the years in different anime roles when I feel like my son's either an inspiration to the voice that ends up coming out or, you know, different things. But certainly I had him, you know, on my mind as we were recording this one.
Right. So you're playing a young boy. You've played young boys many times. You talked about that's where your voice falls. You played Nat and Maiden Abyss, among others. So when you're having to emote the way young Thorfin, I mean, watching the Japanese, they had to go all out. Oh. So I can only imagine what you had to do and how deep you had to dig, like you said. When you're playing a young male character who's having to emote like this, is there anything special you have to do with your voice to get it to sound authentic? Like, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. The one thing about, so Thorfin's more of a like 10 to 12-year-old. So he's not a super young little guy. So, but the voice hasn't changed yet, obviously. Right. But when you're doing something really emotional with little guys, it's okay to take them down a little bit. They have to drop a little bit vocally if they're going to sound genuinely disturbed or upset, and to be authentic. But they're still kids, you know, and so I have to watch myself that I don't just get too into Shannon, or me as an adult, how I would be playing this. So it's just it's kind of a delicate balance of, but I do find that if we get on a roll and just start moving through it, and I'm able to kind of stay in it enough, which the directors are incredibly kind to let me do. Obviously we have to go back and fix things, but if we kind of are really on a roll through an intense moment, then that really helps vocally to be able to give the child because the child has to have gravitas, you know? And so, and you want to, especially in a story like, I don't mean to sound, you know, making it more of it than it is, but you want to honor the little, not little, you want to honor the story that's being told, no matter what the story is. And it doesn't matter if that's a child or an adult. So I'm very big about story. We could probably do a whole other, you know, and how stories save us in a way as humans.
They're so important.
That's how we exist as humans. So yeah, it's just being mindful of, you know, where do we start vocally, and then give myself the permission to go a little deeper if I need to when in the deep moments of grief or anger.
That makes sense. Yeah. So you voiced young Thorfin for 6 episodes, and so without getting too spoilery, did you focus only on like his journey? Did you kind of ask, okay, what lies ahead for him? Did you kind of say, no, I don't want to know, I just want to be in this moment?
It is so action packed. That there was not a lot of, I didn't feel like I needed to know too much about the future. I mean, I knew there was an older version of my character, so I knew that, you know, my character made it through, but it was so intense in terms of not only the emotional, but it was a very physical role. There was a lot of running and yelling and, you know, being starved and then getting to eat. And I mean, and those things create a different emotional, not emotional, a physical journey for me, literally in the booth, like trying to make all those things sound right. And I'm a very, I usually stand when I record because it changes my energy and I want to be up and in it. So I didn't look much to the future. I knew there was a future for Thorfin, but really there was so much to do just being in it, that I knew we just had to help this little guy survive that he could grow up.
Oh gosh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I kind of suspected you might say that, but I wanted to be sure that we covered it. So backing away from, I guess, Thorfin and his experience, were you at all familiar with Viking culture or stories before you started this?
Yes, I was excited. In fact, still in the anime world, many years ago, there was a series called Loki Ragnarok. It was the young detective Loki Ragnarok, and it was the Norse character of Loki, but he'd been sentenced to be trapped into this young boy's body. Right. So I was very honored to get to be cast as Loki, the young boy. But he's this like grumpy guy because he's really not a boy, but he's so it was fun to harken back a little bit to that. But yes, so I was definitely somewhat familiar with Viking culture and and then to get to see kind of how that played out, and not just in a Thor's hammer kind of way, which has its own place and I think is awesome. Yeah. But just from growing up and learning a bit about history and knowing a bit about the Viking culture, it was fun to then see that translated into this world.
Yeah, the characters are historical. Yeah, or some of them are, and that was fascinating to me.
Leif
Erikson. As soon as he was on screen, it was like
Leif, I know.
What?
You're like, that's a real. I know that. Exactly.
So I like Viking culture. Who doesn't really? You said, Thor and his hammer. Who doesn't like Thor and his hammer? So why do you think people should give Vinland Saga a chance if they haven't, or why should they check out this show? What's the appeal beyond Thor's hammer for you?
Right. And again, Thor's hammer really has nothing to do with Vinland Saga. Yeah. I just mean in pop culture today, but it's very big. But I think one of the things that's so compelling about Viking culture, and the reason, obviously, A, it's based in history, but B, it's kind of larger than life. But that's really kind of how it was. If you were going to actually survive in the world, you had to be larger than the rest of life if you were gonna survive. But there's something really raw and human about Vinland Saga. Again, obviously I'm biased because I'm looking at it from the perspective of my character, but the relationships that get developed throughout the story, you have some, this isn't giving anything away, you have some, they had enemies. They had enemy, not tribes isn't the right word, but, enemy territories, and it was literally a fight for survival most of the time. Right. But then these interesting relationships develop within those that are things we can all relate to in one way or another. So it's not just, it is far from just being I am a Viking story. It's an incredibly well-written story, well-crafted story, I felt. So I think you don't have to be into Viking culture to like Vinland Saga. You just need to want to appreciate and dive into a hard story. It's not light and fluffy. That's not, if that's what you want, I totally respect that. This probably isn't the show for you. Right. But if you're willing to kind of, if you want to go deeper, and explore some kind of more intense anime on a story level, come on in.
Yeah, this anime is so unconventional. It's not set in Japan. It's not set in a fantasy universe. It's set on the other side of the world in this different climate. Of just such an interesting direction for anime to take. It
was really unique, and I thought they did a beautiful job with it. And the animation itself is also gorgeous. Yes. At all of the design elements, the music as well. So you really do get a chance to kind of. It's still, obviously, you feel like you're in the anime world, but you get a chance to explore something that we don't see every day in anime.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier the story. The scriptwriter, series supervisor for this one is one of my favorite writers in all of the anime world. He produced some beautiful work, so it makes sense that it is such a it has that universal appeal, like you said. It might be set in Greenland, but it is, it's not all berserker mushrooms and swords. It's
no. I mean, you'll definitely get that, and that's big fun, of course. But there's some really raw, really rough human being stuff that happens.
Yeah, completely. It was I got sucked in immediately. Have you watched the rest of the series?
No, I haven't. I don't have access to it yet. So
the Japanese is on Amazon Prime.
Is it on Prime? Oh no, I haven't watched the whole. I watched a few clips when I was cast and told what role I'd be playing, but I haven't watched the whole thing.
It's good. I'm like over here vibrating. I'm like, oh, it's so good. It's so good. Yes, I love this series. So producer Tom is with us in the booth right now. Hello, producer Tom. How are you?
Good.
I believe you had a specific question you wanted to ask. You circled it on our list of questions and said, this one is mine. So.
No, but I wanted to ask you about the Makoto Shinkai works you have been in. So a quick aside from Vinland Saga. So you've also been in 5 centimeters per second and Children Who Chase Lost Voices and Garden of Words. Can you talk? Is there anything like different about being in one of his animes?
Well, I do think there is a. I think he gives himself permission to go to some heavier places that, a lot of anime you've just been given permission to just go with it, just roll with it, wacky worlds that, who knows what's going to happen and, who knows what the rules are. But, with these works, it is more, it is more grounded, I think. It is more, it's heavier, and the characters are very richly drawn, really fleshed out. And we notice that we as actors often talk about this in terms of, the different types of roles that you get to sink your teeth into, because when all you have is your voice, it's a very different experience than in theater where you're spending, 2 hours with the audience right there in the same room, or in film where they're catching everything that's happening in your eyes and thus capturing what's happening in your heart and soul. So when we get roles like the ones, he's written, you get a chance to do a different kind of acting, I think. This one is probably the most raw in intensity because it's just a really rough story, especially for a kid. I want to be clear that there's no abuse that happens to this child. There's nothing like that, but it is emotionally really rough in terms of what he has to go through. So it's really, we all love it when we get a chance to really dive into characters like he creates.
For sure.
Yeah.
Any follow-up on that?
Oh, no.
No? You got it?
That's it.
Okay, good. Yeah. Makoto Shinkai is his fave, so he nerds out over that. So saw your credit list and went, oh, this one's mine.
Yay!
It was very good. I have a list of scenes that I was rewatching the first 6 episodes just to remind myself of what you were going to have to tackle. And there are a list of scenes that I have in my head that, like, that's going to be so difficult to emote. So you had your work cut out for you on this, I'm sure.
I did, but I absolutely loved it. Yeah. It was really wonderful.
I think Vinland is a very, very special, a very special piece of anime. I know I have to say that, but I in this case.
No, it's unique. And I think that may be what draws you so much to his work. It's definitely still. It's anime. It's in the vein, but there's just something a little bit different about the characters that he creates.
Yeah. So are there any upcoming projects you can tell us about that you're going to be in where we can hear you voice more young boys, perhaps?
Well, actually, I was really excited. I got to do my first video game, and it came out on the Nintendo Switch, which my teenage son tells me means that's awesome. But I've actually seen it, and it is pretty darn fantastic. So I got to voice the character of Tatsun in World's End Club, which was really exciting. It was very very fun to, again, stretch a different actor muscle, especially after doing anime voiceover for 17 years, because the process for doing a video game is slightly different than recording for a story, or a series rather. So World's End Club is out there and available on the Nintendo Switch, and like I said, I played Tatsune. I'm hoping to return to the stage in early 2022. At a play here in Houston. That's not 100%, so I won't say anything else. But I don't want to jinx it. But I do love stage acting is a big part of my heart, and I love getting the chance to do that when the play is right. And then I'm very fortunate that I keep getting calls from you all to keep coming in and showing up, and worked on another video game. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about yet, but and then some other series that are coming out, which is really exciting. So that's a little vague, but that's
sometimes it's got to be in this business. Yeah.
Something to go on. But yeah, I'm very, very lucky to get to do what I love.
You mentioned your son a little bit ago again, and a thought occurred to me that I don't have on my list of prepared questions. So here we go. Does your son watch anime with you, or watch any of the stuff you produce, or do you kind of say, don't watch it, or if you do it in the other room, I don't want to hear myself? How does that go? Especially with, like you said, he kind of maybe helps inform some of your work. So
over the years, he's watched a little bit with me. There's kind of he's definitely proud of me, and he has seen me in plays and things, but I'm still mom, and it's not his job to have to be proud of me or super interested, although he has had a lot of fun telling friends about the game I did for the Switch, so that was fun. But I've shown him a couple of things over the years, and then there was one character in particular that I didn't even realize it until we were pretty much through the series recording it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I am channeling Rowan. So when that one came out, I was like, so this was really kind of you? And he was like, whoa. I mean, that was kind of surreal for him to hear. We didn't watch a ton of it, but so he enjoys it. I think he thinks it's pretty cool that I do it. Right. And he loves, theater and acting and all of those sorts of things too. But we haven't really sat down and watched a whole lot together. That tires pretty quickly.
Yeah, if one of my parents was a voice actor, I think I would flex that a lot. Anime is much more popular today than it was.
He has some friends who are very, very into it. So they he trots that out occasionally.
I would too. Do you think you'll end up watching Vinland with him, or do you think that's
we might. Yeah. And he too loves that whole Viking culture and world and stuff. So I think we just might. Although he gets he's very sweet, and he has a deep feeling heart. And so watching a character when his mom is in torment, even though it's not his mom, we may not watch too much of it, because that tends to kind of make him a little blue, and I don't want to do that. But I think he would really get into the series, because it's just great.
Well, what haven't we asked you about this project that you're dying to talk about? I love tacking this question on at some point, because the answers are always so surprising. Is there anything we haven't asked you? You've just like, I want to talk about this.
Specifically about Vinland?
Yeah. Or in life, whatever floats your boat today.
How long do you have? No. I think it's just and I said this in parts, but as I'm reflecting on our conversation, I think one of the things that's so unique about Vinland is the way they have done justice to a very action-packed. I mean, they're Vikings, so there's going to be a lot of action, but then there's a lot of the characters have their own action-related journeys. I mean, physical action of going from place to place, running from things, fighting, all those sorts of things. The creators have done such justice to a truly action-packed story that demands a level of intensity in its own way, mixed with the emotional story and the emotional intensity that's going on is pretty rare. I think it's rare, and I would say that's not just in anime. I mean, to tell a really genuinely good story that demands the physical as well as the emotional, and do it all justice, is well, that's why you're such a fan of this writer, and all of the work over the years, because it's just hard to do, and when you're, from an artist's side, from an actor's side, when you're just telling it through your voice, we were called to rise to the occasion of the script of, you got to go those places vocally. You got to go those the physical intensity, from the fighting to the screaming to the, and it's not reckless screaming either. That's something that was really. I mean, it is very much warranted. It's not screaming for the sake of screaming. It's intense emotion.
Yes.
Then this is literally the only way you could express it. So I think people who watch are going to find themselves immersed in this world that is so well fleshed out all the way around. It's not like, wow, they just did the action really well, or wow, they told the emotional side really well. It's start to finish, from everything I experienced, just a really beautifully articulated and created story, that you don't always see in any field, in any medium.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So before we let you go, you've been a fantastic interviewee, by the way, just so you know. Where can people find you online? Where can people follow you so they know what you're doing in your career?
Well, I am on Behind the Voice Actor, and anybody who follows that will be thrilled to know I'm finally getting around to updating my headshot there.
Oh, nice.
But I'm on Instagram, Shannon Emerick 24, and then if you happen to be in the Houston area, you can watch for different theater things that are happening. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. This has been
Thank you.
Shannon Emerick. She is voicing Young Thorfinn in Vinland Saga. We are so excited for this performance. Clearly, so much thought, so much passion, so much heart has gone into it. I'm so excited to watch this dub. It's going to be fantastic based on everything you have said. So thank you
Let
so
me
much.
tell you, the other bits that I heard as I was recording, and certainly the folks I was working with, I was really lucky to get to be part of this one. So, and I'm really lucky to get to be here with you all today. I really appreciate you asking me.
Well, we are lucky to have you. So thank you very much for joining us. You have been a delight.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sentai Podcast. This episode was brought to you by High Dive, where you can stream thousands of hours of anime for $4.99 a month. Visit highdive.com for details. Thanks to our guest, Shannon Emerick, our host, Sam Butler, our producer, Tom Helberg, and our editor, Connor Clifton. Thanks for tuning in.